Minji's worn boots made soft squeaking sounds against the polished marble floor as she walked through the massive corridors of Orbital Station New Seoul. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. The invitation in her pocket felt heavier than the plasma torch she carried during her daily maintenance rounds. The conference room doors slid open with a whisper, revealing a sight that made her stomach drop. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow light across the table. Made from rare Centauri wood, round it sat the most powerful people in the galaxy, their expensive clothes glittering with embedded tech displays showing stock prices and trade routes. Park Dae-ho lounged in his chair like a king on his throne. His suit probably cost more than Minji made in 5 years. Diamond cufflinks caught the light as he gestured dismissively toward her. Security must be getting sloppy. How did maintenance staff get in here? His wife saw him giggled behind her jeweled hand. Maybe she's here to fix the air recyclers. The comment sent ripples of laughter through the human relatives clustered at one end of the massive table. But it was the aliens that made Minji's skin crawl. 3 vegan ambassadors stood near the panoramic windows overlooking the swirling blue nebula outside. Each creature stretched nearly 8 feet tall, their blue-tinted skin seeming to glow under the artificial lights. Their elongated limbs moved with predatory grace. And when they turned their triangular heads toward her, their black eyes reflected the room like dark mirrors. Ambassador Velta's mandibles clicked together in rapid succession. The translation device on her throat buzzed with electronic static before producing words in perfect Korean. The servant caste grows bold in our empire. Such creatures would not dare enter the presence of their betters. The other vegans clicked their agreement, the sound like insects chattering in an old forest. Their breathing apparatus, grafted onto their necks like mechanical gills, hissed softly with each breath. Minji had serviced those very breathing units dozens of times, knew exactly how they worked, but the aliens had never acknowledged her existence during those repairs. Corporate executives filled the remaining seats, their augmented reality contact lenses glowing faintly as they accessed private networks. Kim Ji-won, the chief financial officer, kept glancing at Minji with obvious confusion. Lee Tae-yong, head of operations, whispered something to his assistant that made both men chuckle. Minji found an empty chair in the back corner, as far from the others as possible. Her maintenance coveralls felt rough against her skin compared to the smooth fabrics surrounding her. The photograph in her pocket seemed to burn through the fabric, 20 years old, faded at the edges, showing a much younger version of herself, standing beside Park Sun-ho at the loading docks of Europa Station. Perhaps someone should call security, suggested Park Min-ho, another nephew who managed the family's luxury spacecraft division. This woman clearly doesn't belong here. Before anyone could respond, the air in the center of the room began to shimmer. Particles of light danced and swirled, forming the translucent blue figure of the legal AI. The artificial being looked perfectly human except for the soft glow emanating from its skin and the data streams that occasionally flickered across its features like digital tattoos. "Good morning, distinguished guests," the AI said, its voice carrying the perfect pronunciation that only machines could achieve. "I am Legal Advocate 7, assigned to execute the final wishes of Park Sun-ho, as recorded in his testament 48 hours before his departure from this existence." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems and the distant rumble of cargo ships docking in the lower bays through the windows. The asteroid mining platforms looked like tiny fireflies against the cosmic darkness. Velta's mandibles stopped clicking. The corporate executives straightened in their chairs. Even Park Dae-ho's smug expression shifted to something more serious. This was the moment they'd all been waiting for. The division of one of the galaxy's greatest fortunes. Minji pressed herself deeper into her chair, wondering again why she'd been invited. The message had arrived on her personal communicator 3 days ago, bearing the official seal of Park Industries' legal department. She'd read it 20 times, certain there must be some mistake. The AI's glowing eyes swept across the assembled group. Pausing for just a moment on Minji before continuing its scan, data streams flowed faster across its digital features, accessing files that would reshape the balance of power in human space. We shall now begin the reading of Park Sun-ho's final testament. The AI announced, raising one translucent hand. Please note that this session is being recorded for legal purposes and transmitted to the Central Trade Authority for official registry. The silence stretched like a hell breath. Outside, a massive cargo hauler was approaching the docking bay, its running lights blinking red and green against the star field. Minji recognized the ship. She'd personally serviced its main engines just last month. Soon, she might never see those familiar vessels again. The holographic AI's fingers moved through the air like a conductor leading an orchestra, each gesture bringing up floating displays of assets and properties. Park Dae-ho leaned forward hungrily as the first items appeared in shimmering blue text above the table. To Park Min-ho, I bequeath the luxury resort complex on Titan's crystal beaches, including all atmospheric processes and climate control systems. Min-ho's face lit up like a child receiving candy. The resort was worth millions. Its artificial atmosphere allowing humans to walk on beaches made of crystallized methane while watching Saturn's rings. Dance overhead, to Lee Song, my collection of pre-war Earth artifacts housed in the museum vault on Lunar Station. Seong clapped her hands together, her jewelry chiming softly. The collection included actual books made from paper, paintings from long dead masters, and music recordings from humanity's home world before the Great Exodus. The vegan ambassadors watched with cold interest as each bequest was announced. Their triangular heads tilted at strange angles, processing the information through alien logic. Velta's breathing apparatus hissed more rapidly, a sign of either excitement or irritation in their species. To Kim Ji-won, Chief Financial Officer, I leave my personal starship Golden Phoenix and my private estates on 3 colonial worlds. Ji-won nearly fell from his chair. The Golden Phoenix was legendary, a custom-built vessel with experimental engines that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. More gifts flowed like water from a broken dam. Park Sun-ho's wine collection, stored in caves on asteroid stations where the zero-gravity aged the bottles perfectly. His shares in the orbital casinos that floated between Jupiter's moons. His private army of security robots, each one worth more than most people's homes. The relatives buzzed with excitement, calculating their newfound wealth. Some were already making calls on their wrist communicators, contacting banks and investment firms. The sound of whispered conversations filled the air like insects humming in summer heat. But Minji noticed something the others missed. The AI's expression had changed, its digital features becoming more serious. The data streams flowing across its face moved faster now, accessing deeper files that carried heavier security encryption. We now come to the primary inheritance, the AI announced, its voice cutting through the chatter like a sword through silk. The core assets of Park Industries, including the interstellar shipping network that connects 47 star systems. The room went silent so fast it felt like someone had sucked all the air into space. Even the vegans stopped their clicking, their black eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed the true scope of Park Sun-ho's empire. 200 starships, each one massive enough to carry entire cities' worth of cargo for terraforming colonies where humans were turning dead rocks into garden worlds, trade routes that control the flow of resources across known space. To Kim Min-ji, maintenance supervisor of New Seoul Station, the AI continued, I leave my entire interstellar shipping corporation, including all vessels, stations, trade agreements, and controlling shares in for terraforming colonies. The silence that followed felt like being trapped in a vacuum. Minji's heart stopped beating for what felt like an hour. Round the table, faces froze in expressions of shock and disbelief. Someone's crystal glass slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking stars. Park Dae-ho exploded from his chair so violently that it toppled backward. "This is impossible." His face turned red as a Martian sunset. "She's nobody. She fixes toilets and replaces air filters. There must be some mistake." The other relatives erupted in chaos. Soyeon stood up, her jewelry rattling like wind chimes in a storm. The old man lost his mind. She probably drugged him or used some kind of alien mind control device. "Security. Call security," shouted Minho, his hands shaking as he tried to access his communicator. "This woman has somehow hacked the legal system." The vegan ambassadors clicked their mandibles in patterns Minji had never heard before. Velta's breathing apparatus made sharp hissing sounds like an angry snake. "This is unacceptable. Our trade agreements cannot be honored by servant caste. Vegan law forbids it." Through the chaos, the AI remained perfectly calm. Its glowing form expanded, growing brighter until everyone fell silent again. "DNA verification scan initiating," it announced in a voice that brooked no argument. A beam of blue light swept from the AI's eyes, passing over Minji's face and hands. The sensation felt warm, like standing in sunlight on a spring morning. Data cascaded through the air. Genetic markers, protein sequences, chromosome patterns that painted the truth in undeniable science. "Kim Minji is the biological daughter of Park Sun-ho," the AI declared. "Surrendered for adoption 32 years ago, when Mr. Park was an impoverished dock worker struggling to survive on Yoruba stoti. On. DNA match confirmed at 99.97% certainty." Minji's hands trembled like leaves in a hurricane. The photograph in her pocket seemed to burn through the fabric. That old image of her and her father standing together before she understood who he really was. She remembered now. Those moments when she'd catch him watching her work from the observation decks, his eyes filled with something she'd never understood until this moment. The room spun round her like a broken centrifuge. Ambassador Velta unfolded her 8-foot frame like a deadly flower blooming in reverse. Her blue-tinted skin seemed to pulse within a light as she stood, casting eerie shadows across the conference room. The breathing apparatus on her neck hissed like an angry serpent, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. "The Vega Trade Alliance has ruled the shipping lanes for over 3 centuries, she declared, her mandibles clicking with each word. "Our ancestors built the first hyperspace gates when your species was still crawling in dirt. Caves, we do not recognize the authority of CERN cast over matters of galactic commerce." The other vegan ambassadors rose in unison, their movements synchronized like a predatory dance. Their black eyes reflected the holographic displays still floating in the air, showing the vast network of trade routes that connected human space to the rest of the galaxy. Without vegan cooperation, those routes would become as useless as broken compass needles. Furthermore, Velta continued, her translator device buzzing with electronic static. "All existing contracts between the Vega Trade Alliance and Park Industries are hereby declared null and void. We will not honor agreements with one who repairs waste recycling systems." Park Dae-ho's cold smile spread across his face like ice forming on a winter pond. He straightened his diamond cufflinks with deliberate precision, each movement calculated to display his confidence. "The family is united in this matter," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of old money and older prejudices. "I'm filing a formal contest to this will within the hour. The company belongs with legitimate family members who understand the complexities of interstellar business." What the room didn't know was that Deho had been secretly meeting with vegan trade officials for months, late-night conferences in shadowy corners of luxury space stations. Promises of better profit margins and exclusive human labor contracts. He'd offered them things Park Sun-ho never would: access to human colonial worlds, reduced shipping rates, and most importantly, the kind of subservient partnership the vegans preferred. The corporate executives began standing one by one. Like dominoes falling in slow motion, Kim Ji-won cleared his throat nervously. Given the uncertain legal situation, I think it's best if I tender my resignation effective immediately. His augmented reality context flickered as he accessed his personal accounts, already calculating how to transfer his loyalties to Daeho's competing firm. Lee Tae-yong nodded eagerly. The board of directors will need stable leadership during this transition. Mr. Park Dae-ho has graciously offered positions to all senior staff. The promise of continued employment and higher salaries had been made hours before the reading even began. Within minutes, Minji watched the empire she'd just inherited crumble like a sandcastle hit by a tsunami. The holographic AI began, displaying urgent messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Vegan patrol ships were already moving toward human cargo vessels, their weapon systems powered but not yet locked on target. Emergency alert. All Park Industries vessels are ordered to report to nearest vegan stations for immediate inspection and impoundment. Announced. The AI's red warning lights began flashing throughout the conference room. Failure to comply will result in classification as hostile vessels. The massive cargo hauler Minji had noticed earlier was now surrounded by sleek vegan interceptors, their hulls gleaming like shark skin under the nebula's light. She could see the fear in the human crew's faces through the station's telescopic displays as they received the impoundment orders. Soyeon laughed like broken glass. Look at her. She actually thought she could run a galactic shipping empire. The poor girl probably doesn't even know how to balance a checkbook, let alone manage hyperspace trade routes. The other relatives joined in, their laughter echoing off the crystal chandeliers like the sound of carrion birds celebrating over fresh meat. They'd gone from shock to cruel amusement in the span of minutes, already calculating how to divide the company's assets once Daeho's legal challenge succeeded. Minji stood slowly, her legs feeling like they were made of recycled plastic. The photograph in her pocket crinkled as she moved, that old image of her and her father seeming to whisper secrets she was only beginning to understand. Without a word, she walked toward the exit, her squeaky boots the only sound in the room. Besides the alien's mechanical breathing, the corridors of New Seoul Station felt different now, like walking through a museum of her former life. Other maintenance workers stopped to stare as she passed, their faces filled with confusion and concern. Word was already spreading through the station's communication networks. Their supervisor had supposedly inherited a fortune and lost it. All in the same afternoon. Her quarters felt impossibly small after the grand door of the conference room. The walls were covered with technical schematics, maintenance schedules, and detailed diagrams of every ship in what had briefly been a fleet. Years of careful work, documenting every system, every modification, every secret tucked away in the mechanical hearts of those vessels. She'd crawled through the ventilation systems of the stellar wind, mapped every power conduit on the Cosmic Dancer, personally replaced the hyperdrive motivators on the Galaxy Runner. Her hands had touched every critical component. Her mind had memorized every technical specification. The captains knew how to fly these ships, but Minji knew how to make them sing. The soft chime of Minji's door broke through her thoughts like a pebble dropped into still water. She looked up from the schematics covering her small table, expecting to see security officers coming to escort her off the station. Instead, 3 familiar faces peered through the doorway, Her fellow maintenance workers carrying their beat-up toolkits like weapons of war. Junho stepped inside first. His weathered face creased with determination. At 55, he'd been fixing starships since before Minji was born. His hands permanently stained with coolant fluid and plasma residue. "We heard what happened in there," he said, setting his toolkit down with a metallic clank. "Load of garbage, if you ask me." Behind him came Hayek. Barely 22, but already one of the best engineers on the station. His fingers danced across a portable scanner as he spoke. "We've been running deep analysis on the fleet's hidden systems. Your father wasn't just a businessman. He was a damn genius engineer." The scanner's screen showed cascading lines of code that pulsed like a digital heartbeat. Sola squeezed through the doorway last, her small frame deceptive. She could crawl through ventilation shafts that would trap larger technicians, and her knowledge of ship AI systems was legendary among the maintenance crews. "Minji, you need to see what we found buried in the system cores." They gathered round her tiny table, pushing aside coffee cups and meal containers to make room for their equipment. Hayek's scanner projected a three-dimensional map of the Stellar Wind, the flagship of Park Sun-Ho's fleet. But this wasn't the ship the corporate executives knew. Hidden pathways glowed like veins of light through the hull. Secret compartments tucked between official blueprints. "Look at this," Sola whispered, her fingers tracing patterns in the holographic display. "Every ship in the fleet has secondary systems that aren't in any official documentation, advanced AI cores. Hidden weaponries, engine modifications that could double their speed." Junho nodded grimly. "Your father spent decades preparing for something like this. He knew the aliens would try to take control eventually." His calloused finger pointed to a series of override codes embedded deep in the ship's programming. "These codes, they're keyed to your biometric signature. Only you can activate them." Through the small window of her quarters, Minji could see the impounded ships floating helplessly near vegan patrol vessels. Their crews had been forced to evacuate, leaving the vessels dead in space like sleeping giants. The vegan interceptors circled them like predators, their weapon systems glowing with contained energy. "They think they've won," Minji said quietly, her voice carrying a new edge of steel. "The aliens believe humans are just servants who follow orders." Hayek's scanner beeped softly. "The override system is fully operational. We can activate it from here using the station's communication ray." His young face was flushed with excitement. "But once we do this, there's no going back. The vegans will consider it an act of war." Minji stood up, her maintenance coveralls suddenly feeling like armor instead of work clothes. "My father didn't build an empire just to watch aliens tear it apart. Let's show them what human engineering can really do." They worked through their night, their fingers flying over control panels and circuit boards. The station's other maintenance workers quietly joined them, bringing additional equipment and technical expertise. Word spread through the human quarters like wildfire. Their own supervisor was fighting back against creatures who saw them as nothing more than clever animals dotted down. Minji stood before the primary communication console, her hand hovering over the activation switch. Round her, dozens of screens showed the locations of Park Industries vessels across 3-star systems. All of them sat motionless under vegan guard, their crews imprisoned on alien stations. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Solar announced from her position at the communications station, "You'll go and live to every human colony in known space." Minji pressed the switch, and the hidden systems her father had spent decades perfecting came alive like awakening dragons. Across the galaxy, ships that had seemed dead suddenly blazed with new energy. Their AI cores, dormant for years, opened electronic eyes that glowed with purpose. The Stellar Wind was the first to move. Its massive engines igniting in a display of blue fire that lit up the darkness round New Seoul Station. The vegan patrol ships scrambled to respond, but their targeting systems couldn't lock onto vessels that were already accelerating beyond their expected capabilities. Attention all human colonies. Minji spoke into the communication ray, her voice carrying across light years of space. The aliens think we're servants because we maintain their technology and follow their rules. But they never learn the most important lesson. The person who fixes something understands it better than the person who owns it. One by one, the impounded ships broke free from vegan custody. The modifications Minji had installed during routine maintenance revealed themselves like hidden trumps in a cosmic card game. Engines that could burn twice as hot without overheating. Navigation computers that could plot courses through stellar phenomena that would destroy conventional vessels. Shield generators that could deflect energy weapons the vegans thought were unstoppable. The Galaxy Runner executed a hyperspace jump that should have been impossible, disappearing from vegan sensors only to reappear behind their patrol formation. The Cosmic Dancer used gravitational manipulation to slingshot round a gas giant, achieving speeds that made the alien interceptors look like floating rocks. Within 3 weeks, the impossible became routine. The Stellar Wind completed a cargo run from the Centauri system to the Outer Rim colonies in just 8 days, a journey that typically took vegan vessels 3 weeks. The ship's modified engines hummed with efficiency that defied conventional physics, burning fuel at rates that made accountants weep with joy. Captain Yuna broadcast her amazement across the fleet communication network. The navigation system is showing me routes through the Crimson Nebula that I never knew existed. We're cutting through gravitational fields that would tear apart standard vessels like paper in a hurricane. The human colonies watched in stunned silence as ship after ship arrived ahead of schedule, their cargo holds filled with goods that had been delayed for months under vegan management. The mining platforms orbiting Kepler 440 to receive their desperately needed medical supplies too. Weeks early, the agricultural stations near Wilf 359 got their seed shipments in time for the planting season that everyone thought they'd missed. But it was the route through the Maelstrom sector that truly shocked the galaxy. The region was considered impossible to navigate, a twisted maze of collapsed stars and gravitational anomalies that had claimed dozens of ships over the centuries. Vegan vessels avoided it completely, adding weeks to their journeys round its treacherous borders. Minji's ships sailed through it like dolphins dancing through ocean waves. The AI systems her father had hidden in their cores seemed to understand the chaotic physics in ways that baffled traditional navigation computers. They rode gravitational currents like surfers on cosmic tides, using the very forces that destroyed other vessels to accelerate beyond the speed of light. The first colony to officially join Minji's independent network was New Horizon, a terraforming world where humans were slowly turning a desert planet into a garden. Governor Jihoon made the announcement during a live broadcast that reached every human settlement in the sector. For too long, we've accepted the Vegan Trade Alliance's schedule, delays and inflated shipping costs, he declared, standing before the planet's first successful wheat field. These crops wouldn't exist without the fertilizer shipments that arrived 3 weeks ahead of the alien timeline. Humanity doesn't need alien babysitters anymore. Colony after colony followed New Horizons led, the ice miners of Europa Station. Tired of vegan officials treating them like indentured servants, the research facilities of Proxima Centauri, frustrated by aliens who censored their scientific discoveries. The military outposts guarding human space, fed up with creatures who questioned their right to defend themselves. The Vega Trade Alliance's response was swift and predictable. They imposed trade sanctions, blocked access to their hyperspace gates, and threatened military action against any human vessel that entered their territory. But their threats rang hollow when human ships began completing routes that bypassed Vegan space entirely. Ambassador Velter watched her empire's foundation crumble like a sandcastle hit by tsunami waves. Trade revenues dropped by 60% in the first month. Vegan patrol ships found themselves chasing human vessels that simply vanished into regions of space their sensors couldn't penetrate. The economic reports flowing across her desk painted a picture of approaching disaster. Her breathing apparatus hissed with what her species called the sound of defeat. The clicking of her mandibles had slowed to a funeral rhythm. When she finally requested permission to dock at New Seoul Station, her message carried none of the arrogant authority that had defined vegan communications for centuries. We seek negotiations. The translation device buzzed with barely contained humiliation. Perhaps certain arrangements can be reconsidered. The meeting took place in the same conference room where Minji had been humiliated weeks before, but now the power dynamics had shifted like tectonic plates during an earthquake. Velda sat across from the woman she dismissed as servant caste, her elongated frame somehow seeming smaller despite her 8-foot height. Perhaps, the alien ambassador said, each word extracted like a painful tooth. We underestimated human capabilities. Your species has shown unexpected resourcefulness. Minji leaned back in her chair, still wearing the same maintenance coveralls that had marked her as inferior in alien eyes. The tools on her belt caught the crystal chandelier's light, each one a reminder of the practical knowledge that had built her empire. My father used to tell me something when I was learning to fix broken things. He said the person who understands how something works has more power than the person who just owns it. The negotiations stretched for 3 days, with human colonies sending representatives to witness the historic reversal, the vegans facing complete economic collapse. Agreed to junior partnership status in what was now called the Human Colonial Trade Network. They would provide certain services and access to their remaining territories, but they would no longer dictate terms to human worlds. Park Daeho's competing company had collapsed within 2 months, unable to secure shipping contracts or alien support. His luxury offices sat empty, his diamond cufflinks sold to pay mounting debts. The relatives who had mocked Minji now sent desperate messages begging for employment in her organization. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 6 months later, when the first class of vegan engineering students arrived at New Seoul Station to learn human maintenance techniques. Young aliens who had been taught that humans were intellectually inferior now studied under the people they'd been raised to despise. Minji kept her small quarters, refusing offers of luxury apartments and executive suites every morning. She still walked through the maintenance bays, checking on the ships that had carried humanity to independence. Her hands remained stained with coolant fluid and plasma residue. Badges of honor that no amount of wealth could replace. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating those who worked with their hands. The end.